try to explain to you how what was my passion became my job. And I'd like to start by thanking Mother Nature for giving us such perfect weather for me to try and extol the virtues of a nice cold beer. It's really much appreciated. Look, mine takes a little bit different presentation to my fellow presenters because perhaps I came to my food or imbibe moment a bit later in my life than they did. So it's a bit of a journey. There's even an epiphany in there. Because beer writers tend to be made rather than born. It is something that you grow into, often quite literally, it must be said. Particular challenge for me tonight is this presentation is completely reliant on PowerPoint and strict time limits, which are traditionally the natural enemy of the beer writer. So we're going to go with it, and let's pause slide number 1. So my primary career was in Parliament. I was a researcher and a speechwriter during 6 very turbulent years in New Zealand political history. I worked through 2 elections, 3 party leaders, 7 ministers of consumer affairs, and I technically lost my job 5 times due to the interesting nature of employment laws. This graph is actually of the National Party's polling rating while I worked in Parliament. Some have argued that I am perhaps the greatest Labour operative of modern times, which would be good if I wasn't working for the National Party during that stage. So that's the actual Colmar-Brunting polling relating, and then this doesn't help. I was hoping that wouldn't be quite as obvious as that, but there we go. And in fact, actually, I didn't even want to continue that graph because they actually get more and more popular the longer I've been out of Parliament, though John Key may actually be a factor in that. It has to be said, while I was there, few people who worked with me in Parliament would ever think that I'd be a professional beer writer, mainly because I only drank tui at that time. I was a fanatical follower. It was the beer for every occasion. I was a case study in their marketing department. I have a tui couch and a tui television set. That's how bad it was. But I was converted. And it was my friend Phil who had much better taste in beer than I did. And he would come around with boxes of beers, interesting beers, and say, try a little bit of this, sir, rather than your bog standard New Zealand lager. And to my shame, I resisted these gorgeous Belgian beers and German wheat beers and IPAs made in Dunedin for too long. But this beer's the one that got me. Pink Elephant Mammoth. A strong ale made by an elephant-obsessed Englishman in Blenheim. And I only tried it because I was told it was 2% stronger than tui, but only 50 cents more. And I tried it and I loved it. And I said, why is this so different from all the other beers I've had? And Phil said, flavour, you idiot, flavour. So I started reading. I read a lot. There's a lot of stuff written about beer. I wanted to know about history and chemistry. I wanted to know why we could travel the world now and drink blonde, taste-alike lagers every country we went to. And I wanted to know how we could go about changing that, because beer has a lot more to it. And to get that knowledge, I needed to do research. And this, for me, is research. It involves trying different beers and taking notes that are legible later. It involves discussing aromas and flavours, because beer can have that. It's talking to the people who make the beer and capturing their stories, and it's figuring out how to introduce people to the best beer that they've probably never heard of. And to do this, I blog about beer, I write about beer for real publications, I talk a lot about beer in seminars and tastings, doing tours, and all of it is designed to get people as excited about craft beer as I am, and get them to try something so they might discover a new favourite. And I ran my first ever tasting in 2003 when I still had a full-time job elsewhere. 9 people attended and I made $17.67 in profit. I got slightly better at the tastings and my business model improved slightly. And then in 2006 I took the plunge, became self-employed, and have never looked back. I was lucky I did that at a time when people in New Zealand and media in New Zealand were getting more interested in craft beer. Beers like Emerson's, beers like Epic, beers like 8 Wide, which is the current champion brewery. It's the only category of beer which is growing in sales at the moment, because we're drinking less beer, but we're drinking better. And I was lucky to be there at the time. Because beer only has 4 basic ingredients. Malted barley, which gives it colour and base flavours, hops, which bring aroma and bitterness, yeast, which converts sugar into carbon dioxide and alcohol, and water, which is pretty much most of beer. But from those 4 basic ingredients, and occasionally with additions of other things, brewers can create over 75 different styles of beer, distinct styles of beer. So it's really versatile, and that means it can bring a lot to even the best table. Beer and food matching is a real growing trend in New Zealand, and I've been lucky enough to do a number of these in recent years, because beer can go with every course, and that includes dessert. So here is an organic and kosher, kid you not, kosher dark lager from Founders in Nelson. And so its delicate coffee and chocolate notes are a perfect complement for the richness of that cake. And it also has a little dryness which balance out the sweetness that's in their dessert there. And that includes cheese. So here's the same beer with a very smelly piece of blue cheese. And really, you know, they just basically mesh together. The beer tastes sweeter with the blue cheese. It takes the edge off the cheese and it meshes together really nicely. And that particular combination has converted a lot of, frankly, skeptical people. Beervana is the biggest beer festival in New Zealand. It's just been, so you've missed it, but definitely go next year. So did a lot of matches with great chefs from around New Zealand, including Sean Clouston from Logan Brown, matching a kedgeree with a beer made with peat smoked malt, a beer considered unmatchable with food. It was brilliant. We also occasionally didn't have a good chef available, so we had someone to come along and do a bit of prep and a few dishes. So Martin really stole the show. A decadent pork and oyster congee, a dish I was previously regarded as 2-minute noodles from China, with a lovely balanced IPA from Christchurch. So while I love talking about the flavours of food, I always try to remember that it's fundamentally a sociable drink and that you should enjoy the taste no matter how much you know or how little you know about it. And for my mind, you know, fancy a pint is probably the most gorgeous phrase in the English language, particularly seeing it never means just 1 pint. But that doesn't mean I can stop researching. I take my research very seriously indeed, because there are always new beers out there, old favourites to rediscover, beers that even I haven't heard of. And so, you know, it's that joy of being able to go somewhere and try something for the first time, enjoy it for the first time, and learn a bit more. So people sometimes accuse me of having a dream job, and I guess I do. My passion has become my profession. My pursuit of hoppiness is never going to end, because there's always more to do. But what I would encourage you to do today, when you go home, maybe not today because everything's probably shut because of snow, find a craft beer from New Zealand that you've never heard of, try it, and hopefully it's the best one you've ever had. Cheers.